Texas starts off 1-0 for the first time under Tom Herman. Louisiana sports writer Brooks Kubena joins the show to break down the game against LSU this weekend. And Robert and I got all our predictions for week 2 of college football. This is the 1-0 Sports Show. Hello and welcome in to the 1-0 Sports Show. And I'm your host, Thomas Fitch, joined by Robert Trevino. And as we mentioned, Texas finally 1-0, finally riding for the brand, although Tom Herman did say they were 1-0 10 times last season, but they are actually 1-0 on the record sheets. So, Robert, let's get started talking about that game. And we're going to talk about what we liked from that game. I'll go first. You'll go second. The first thing that I liked, well, they didn't lose week 1. And that's kind of been the whole kind of monkey on Texas's back, playing Maryland, the last 2 years, getting to that 1-0 spot, got rid of that against Louisiana Tech. And at the end of the day, just the whole team looked good. Ehlinger looked good. Keontae Ingram was making cuts. He was running. I was looking back through his highlights the other day, and I mean, there was 1 or 2 bad runs. Other than that, he's making cuts. He's making yards out of blown plays. He's looking good. The defense looks stout. Caden Stearns is going to be a beast. I mean, I don't think he missed a tackle at all in the game. And so everything is clicking. Texas is looking good. That's what I like from the game.
Yeah, you mentioned Ingram had a big day, 7.1 yards a carry. I think a lot of that was due to the wide receiver depth. That was something that I loved that Texas came out and showed. They threw passes to 10 different guys. Who I kind of fell in love with is Brennan Eagles.
Oh, yeah.
2 touchdown catches. He looked great. I think that the Longhorns are going to have some big wide receiver depth this year, but they're going to need it. Let's get into what I didn't like from this game. You can go second here. I'm going to say, obviously, the big elephant in the room, the running back depth for Texas. Now down to where the backup quarterback last year, Roschon Johnson, is now the backup running back. And so, I mean, Texas is just kind of, put in an awkward spot there. Louisiana Tech was able to gain yards in places as well, I think, on the defense. But you can attribute that to Texas trying out some different schemes. But overall, you would have liked to see a better defensive performance in terms of guarding the air attack for Texas. So I think that was the one question mark that the first game left me with.
Yeah, the backup running back, it's because Roschon Johnson backup, who's a freshman. Then after that, another freshman who's a linebacker, primarily David Kubena. You better hope that Keontae Ingram stays healthy. What I didn't like from the game, and this is one thing that I think Texas lacked last year, they're great at driving the ball kind of slowly, methodically down the field, but they're still, it feels like the big plays aren't there yet. And when you watch all the other good teams play, your Alabamas, your Clemsons, your OUs, your Ohio States, they have those big plays. They're able to turn a screen into a 50-yard play. They have the bomb. I mean, Sam Ehlinger did have some longer passes to Brennan Eagles. He had a 30-yard or something like that. But we're still not seeing those big plays, and that explosiveness is something you need, especially, it's one thing when you're up big and you can slowly drive down the field and you can take that time. But when you're in a game such as LSU this weekend and it might be close, down the stretch, you're going to have to be able to score quick. And so that's the one thing that I think needs to be improved. But other than that, it was a great game. Yeah. All right, so we're going to talk more about Texas football next block. But for now, let's get into some segments. This one's a new one. It's called the Fine Bomb of the Week. And who else is going to be the Fine Bomb of the Week? But Paul Feinbaum
himself, yeah.
Yeah. On his show this past week, said 4 things. He says, 1, Texas has has only 1 healthy running back, so they can't run.
That's true.
It's true.
I don't know if it says they can't run.
It is true about the 1 healthy running back.
But that is true. They have 1 healthy running back. You can't call.
But by the way,
Roschon Johnson,
Keontae Ingram, he has legs,
solid.
right?
Yeah, he does have
Sam
legs.
Ehlinger?
He does have legs.
So
he's not a
run,
running back.
Right?
He's not a running back.
Okay.
But Feinbaum, I'll give him like half a point.
Dude, you like okay. Feinbaum way too much.
Yeah, all right. I'm like the Feinbaum. I'm the Feinbaum of this show. All right,
Robert's the Feinbaum of the show. So he also said Longhorn crowd will not be a factor. That's just, to me, that's objectively false. Like,
yeah.
I think there's some overratedness to a crowd being a factor, but there's going to be 100,000 fans packed in there because the south end zone is closed. Mm-hmm. I mean, the most excitement I think there's been around a Texas football game in a long time. Mm-hmm. It's going to be loud. Yeah. And it is certainly going to be a factor. I'm sorry, maybe it's not Death Valley at night or, we're not down in Tuscaloosa. Sorry, Paul. But
Yeah, there's going to be thousands of people just right outside the gates who don't even want to go to this game or to get in.
Yeah.
Or they don't have tickets. They're just going to be out there watching on the big screen. And I think, if Paul Feinbaum, if this was an SEC game, if this game was in Death Valley, he'd definitely say that the crowd was going to be a factor.
Exactly.
So this is a pretty ignorant statement.
Thank you
All
for
right.
finally
Yeah, okay, I'll give you
getting
no
off
points
that
on that
SEC
one. Yeah,
train.
all right. Yeah, but we'll be
third
back.
thing he said is it should be an LSU QB at Heisman talks. I'm going to be real here. I haven't watched much Joe Burrow tape, but if I know anything about LSU QBs, I'm going to wait until I see
Yeah, I mean,
what he could do.
you
Now,
know,
granted,
I'm not-
he is a transfer,
yeah,
but
I'm not exactly going to vote, Jake Coker in for a Heisman. So, I mean, this is kind of the same vibe. But I would say Joe Burrow is underrated.
Absolutely.
Especially, I mean, absolutely. I don't think that.
but that's not to discount what Sam Ehlinger has done.
For sure. I mean, yeah, when he said that, it was kind of discounting.
It was
Ellinger. So
absolutely
he's saying,
discounted, yeah.
he should be in Heisman talks. They can both be in Heisman talks.
And the last thing he said, there's not much positive there that convinces me Texas wins game.
That's an extremely subjective statement.
so subjective.
It's like, just make your prediction poll. Just say you don't think Texas is going to win. I don't know. There's not much positive there. Texas has a solid offense.
Yep.
They have a solid defense,
Yep.
and they have a solid special teams.
Good coaching.
That's the key to winning a game.
Yeah.
So that's the whole game.
Yeah. Come on, Paul. All right, let's get to the next segment. This one is called Do Us All a Favor and Delete Your Twitter. Reddit college football last week. This was last Saturday when the Big 12 went 10-0, by the way. Now, granted, seven of those
FCS teams.
were against FCS teams, and he said, yeah, the Big 12, or Reddit said, Big 12 played 7 FCS teams. The rest of the country only played 6, or rest of the Power 5 teams. Well, that's great, but just wait till November. Because that's when all the SEC schools will be playing FCS teams when football actually matters. And also, by the way, what school lost to an FCS team this week?
Oh,
Tennessee, who is in the great SEC conference.
man, I mean, for an SEC, backer like myself, kind of Feinbaum Jr., that really hurt me. But, I mean, whenever Alabama's playing the Citadel the week of
Yeah, I know.
Texas having to go
It's
on
like
the
week
road
12.
to West Virginia
It's
or
like week
something
12.
like that.
You gotta be kidding me.
It's absolutely ridiculous, and I think that the SEC should definitely be forced to play that game earlier in the season.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a smart play. It's definitely what the Big 12 should be doing, is playing those easy games later in the season. Get yourself that easy week in the middle of the season.
I disagree. Every other sport, I know baseball's a little different because they got their Tuesday games, but every other sport you get your non-conference ahead of the season, and then you go into and you play your conference games. There's no reason to, take a break from playing your conference schedule to play a cupcake.
Yeah.
Maybe have a bye week in there, but play the cupcakes at the beginning of the season. It's not like it's not like the SEC is like playing a bunch of good. I mean, A&M played Texas State. Okay, that's like the closest you could be to an FCS team in the FBS. So I just think they got to move them up, and the fact that they get to play 4 non-conference games and like 3 of them are against, Missouri States for the blind. Come on, come on.
I'll agree with you on that one.
All right, final segment of this block. The Run Your Mouth Trash Talker of the Week goes to, you want to say his name, Robert? You know it better than me. We were looking this up.
Yes, I apologize. I had it. Kaylavon Chasen. I thought it was Clavon. I was corrected. So
Good J work
so
there.
Kaylavon Chasen.
We looked it up.
What did Chasen say?
Let's play it.
It's definitely going to be a good game next week. Obviously, going against people from the Texas area. The guys really strongly believe they're going to have a chance. I don't, but you know what I'm saying, that's what you're supposed to do. But like I said, it's going to be a good game.
Yes, obviously Chasen and Ehlinger had some history dating back, and we're actually going to get to talk to Brooks about his article that he had about that story, and I was really excited to read about that and learn about the history with obviously the high school championship a few years back. But I love this energy.
Yeah.
From a linebacker, from a big school, going into the biggest game of the season.
Yeah.
You have to have this energy and say, we're going to win this game. They think they have a chance. They don't. I mean, what kind of energy do you want from your guy?
Yeah.
Do you want your guy to just say, no, I think, they're a solid team and, they'll probably give us some trouble. That's not the energy that you have. It's like a wide receiver whenever they have that kind of arrogance
Right.
But you see the guys that are like number one. To become that kind of wide receiver, you have to believe in yourself that much that you think no one on earth could stop you. And so it's not this false arrogance. It's something that they actually believe, and they have to believe in order to be that good. So I love this energy from Chase in here, and that's what makes him an NFL type guy.
Well, I don't completely disagree with you here. And I think it is great as far as just like getting the hype out there.
Yeah.
You know, there's been so much trash talking that is just great for the game of college football because this matchup is being so hyped up. I just think it was a dumb move by him. Just on the fact that, you know, we said this last week when Texas was going into La Tech. If La Tech wanted to beat Texas, they needed to be quiet. They needed to come in as a sleeper. Now, granted, LSU was in no way coming in as a sleeper. I mean, this was, you know, this and the OU game are the two games you circle on the calendar before the season. But the more you talk, the more you put a chip on Sam Ehlinger's shoulder. The more you put a chip on the Texas team. And that's not something I want to play against. I don't want to play against a team with a chip on their shoulder. But on the other hand, as a player, what are you going to say? I expect them to beat us? You know, and so I think there's two sides to this.
Yeah, no, I think when you said like Chasen obviously put a chip on Ehlinger's shoulder, he could be trying to flex now.
Yeah.
And just say, I don't care if you have a chip on your shoulder. I'm still going to like put that chip on your shoulder, and then I'm still going to go out and beat you. So I think, you know, he's saying, I'm not Louisiana Tech. I don't have to be quiet. I don't have to like pretend to be Terry Bradshaw with my suspenders. I can just like come out and just say, I'm going to beat you, and then go out and beat you. He's like the Ivan Drago of college football. I think that's what he's trying to pull.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it should set up for an incredible game on Saturday. When we come back, Brooks Kubena, I think I said that right. Did not say it right. He's going to correct us next block, and we're going to break down all the LSU game and some more. Stick around.
Welcome back to the 1-0 Sports Show. We're here with Brooks Kubena.
Kubena.
I got that right this time.
Kubena? Did we get it right?
Kubena.
Let's just give up.
Let's give up on it. But anyway,
I'm Brooks, you can call me Brooks.
Okay.
There we go. We got Brooks on the show. And Brooks, you're a former Texas student media legend. You did it all here. But what's it like to be back here at TSTV, back on set?
Well, it's good to be called a legend. That's completely false. But it's great. I mean, I remember being here just in the same chairs that you guys are in. This table is still going strong, I see. But man, it's just, you know, going back to my old stomping ground, seeing a lot of things. I really value this. I think this is a good chance for you guys to learn what you do. I got to watch your block the first time, and I had some arguments. Y'all had me going. So no, I'm glad that this is still an institution where students can come in and learn, because this is a heck of an experience, and I'm glad to be a part of it as much as I can be for y'all today.
Yeah, you did TSTV when you were at UT. You're now in print. So this is kind of the big question that I think people tune in to get. What's the better type of journalism, broadcast or print?
Well, they each have their own strengths, obviously. You know, I like what TV does, and you can, you know, do different things visually and telling a story. I was drawn to print because at a young age, that's what I did. I wrote. It was also out of college the first job that I got an offer for. So you take it where you get it. And I'm just running that ball as far as I can. So I enjoy the written word. I think there's a lot of analysis that you can do, a lot of things that you can go behind the scenes and not quite do if you had to carry a camera around. And I think sometimes you can get more authenticity when you're sitting someone in their house and not having to look into the camera sometimes. But you know, there's also some strengths to being able to go on television, and I think they both have their strengths for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into kind of some of the LSU-Texas matchup. So I read the piece you had for The Advocate, in which you know you detailed the history of Kayvon Chasen. I'm getting some name issues today. Kayvon Chasen and Sam Ehlinger. So I mean, how much do you think that that's going to be a part of this game? And like, because it's something kind of out of a movie when you go and read the story.
Well, yeah, I mean, so background, I used to do radio broadcasts as well. So that game, the state title game in 2015 between Westlake and North Shore, I was on the broadcast for that, and it was one of the wildest state championship games in the history of Texas high school football. And people still debate whether that North Shore defense is the best that there ever was. And Calebon Chason was actually, he didn't play, I mean, he didn't practice that whole week leading up to that game. His arm was actually in a sling. He had a collarbone issue, and he didn't want to mess with it before the game. But he went in there, he had, I think, a sack and a half in that game. And in overtime, Westlake was down 7, and they tried to run a sweep wide receiver pass. And Calebon was just waiting for it in the backfield and stripped the ball, and game was over. But it went back and forth the entire way. And we did a bit of an oral history on that for the Advocate. And I thought it turned out pretty well. I'm glad that it reached you. I'm glad to have you as a reader. But this does highlight one of the biggest parts of this game is Calebon missed the season last year. Had a ACL tear in the first week of the season against Miami. They missed him throughout the entire season. They could not establish a good pass rush the rest of the year, talking about LSU. And now that he's back, they're going to be more dangerous. This guy could possibly become a first-round pick in the NFL. He's fast, he's strong. They think he can break the LSU single-season sack record. And with Sam's ability to run, he's going to be one of those guys that is going to be there to contain him. So that will be one of the biggest matchups to look for in Saturday, and it would be that way even without their interesting history.
Yeah, and you obviously study LSU and just watch LSU a lot more than we do. How worried should Texas be about LSU coming in on Saturday?
Texas is the underdog,
right?
And by some S&P Plus numbers, 2 touchdown underdogs. I think when Texas's offense is looking at this, there are legitimately in the secondary for LSU 4 guys that could eventually be top 50 picks in the NFL draft. I don't think that's something Sam Ehlinger has seen. I think with the depth y'all talked about at running back, there is an issue there. LSU has 4 linebackers on the Butkus Award watch list. The defensive line is much stronger than it was last year, and I think in this environment, Texas is going to be tested like they haven't been tested before. I'm not going to say that they can't win in this game. I think it's going to be closer than some S&P Plus numbers say, but for sure, like it is a situation where this is LSU's most talented team they've fielded in quite some time.
Yeah. So on the flip side, what is LSU worried about looking at the Texas team?
I think that they, LSU's offense is still running pretty smoothly. It went 5 touchdowns in a row to start the game last week. I think what LSU is trying to figure out is how well it can work against Power 5 defenses. I think the defensive line for Texas is fairly good. Malcolm Roach, actually a Baton Rouge guy that did not get offered. He's got a chip on his shoulder in this game, wants to play very well. Yeah. I think how Texas's defense is going to muddy up their signals for the run-pass option offense. I think when you look at Todd Orlando, he does a lot of the same things that Dave Aranda does, and he mixes up the defense, rotates safeties in. He's got a package called Cowboy, where there's eight safeties on the field at once, and it just messes up your signals, and you don't know what's dropping and what's coming. And when you're running the run-pass option, you have to identify keys as to what you're reading. So that can muddy up some things, and I think this will be the first ultimate test for this offense. And with Orlando being as creative as he is, it'll be about how well they're going to make adjustments throughout the game.
Yeah, on that side of the ball, how do you think Texas's Cowboy package is going to fare this week, especially because Joe Burrow is so talented?
I think Burrow is a exceptional quarterback out of understanding and reading defenses. I think he's seen a lot of these styles of defenses, and one of them is in his own backyard. I think Dave Aranda and Todd Orlando are very much of the same kind of style. So Joe understands how a team is supposed to mess with his signals. LSU has a system where they use 7 defensive backs on the field at once, and that was kind of a thing I wanted to ask Todd about. What's the difference between a 7th and an 8th guy? And it can be substantial. Yeah. It can be substantial, and if the depth is there, I think there's still a lot of questions about this Texas secondary, especially after giving up 300 yards to Louisiana Tech. But there is talent there, and I think Joe Burrow has proven that he's good at communicating both with his coaching staff and the players in the backfield and telling them which keys to read. So it's certainly something to look for.
And this is an important question. You've covered Texas, you've covered LSU. Who is the real DBU? And don't say Florida, please.
Well, I find it interesting that Texas brings up the DBU thing, and you know it's kind of one of those things that doesn't really matter.
Oh yeah, no, not at all.
But
not at all.
If we're looking at pure numbers for defensive backs, I just said earlier, and I'm just saying this from an objective, fact-based thing. LSU has 4 guys who will probably be top 50 NFL picks in the secondary. Greedy Williams was picked last year. Texas hasn't produced that within the past 5 years, really. The last guys that you can think of that were actually elite guys, I think DBU really was part of that time where you had guys like Nathan Vasher, and then up until Earl Thomas, and then Kenny Vaccaro was kind of that last guy who, you know, really proved that he could be elite on the field. And, you know, now Caden Stern seems like he's one of those guys who can possibly bring that back. But defensive secondary has been an issue at Texas within the last 5 years, and Texas hasn't been great on the football field either. So I think Tom Herman had the perfect answer when he was asked about that. If they're going to wear the shirts and it makes them better, go ahead and wear it. But if we're talking about pure production, LSU has been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, I think they said it was one of those things of they're trying to get back to how Texas used to be.
Right.
But then, of course, the fans take it and they're like, what are the real DBU? And the players are like, we're not saying that. But, you know, they take it. So you're an AP Top 25 voter.
Yes.
What's your process for ranking? Because that's a ton of football teams to rank. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, there's no,
when
like,
do you start?
I'm assuming you're not watching all the games.
Or do you?
Well, I was actually, this time the polls were due Tuesday morning
that's right.
because of Labor Day weekend. And I think I was up until 4 a.m. I take it very seriously. I think there has always long been a concern and question about sports writers that don't watch the games. I think that's something that I want to come in. I want to be knowledgeable about the teams and what they did. So the wealth of knowledge that's out there now on the internet, you can go on YouTube and watch condensed versions of games. And if I have a question about a team, I want to go and look at it. Like Wisconsin, I jumped Wisconsin, I think 5 places because I was impressed with their offense. I think with Wisconsin, they run a lot of the spread schemes that LSU's doing. Like people think of Wisconsin as the ground and pound I formation. They're not doing that anymore. They're in the shotgun and they're using Jonathan Taylor, who I think is probably one of the front runners to win the Heisman at running back. They're using him exactly how they should use him. You can run the run-pass option and get the defense coming up and bringing in that 7th man, that 8th man. And when they used to be limited because they were in the eye, they can hit those passes. And they were running really well against South Florida and Texas's former coach, Charlie Strong. And they just blew them out of the water. So, I want to be able to look at every team in some capacity before I make my decision. And I don't want to be limited by what I voted the week before, especially in the preseason, because I didn't see any of the teams.
Right.
And I thought, okay, well, this is what I think that they're going to be based on their recruiting and their, and I check S&P Plus and all these other metrics and my own kind of gut feeling on these teams. But whenever I see it, I had Florida number 7 going in because I just thought, they showed a lot. Dan Mullen is a good offensive mind. Right. It looked like Felipe Frank took the next step. And then when they played Miami, it was the worst game I'd ever seen anybody play. And it wasn't because it was too early. They started their camp earlier than everybody else. They had just as much practice time. And I was like, well, do I think that Florida is better than these teams? And I kept saying no, 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 and then I'd place them where I did. So I take it. I try and be as analytical as possible, read as much as possible, and then not be so stern based upon what I voted the week before.
All right, I just got a couple more questions. First of all, we saw Bevo versus Uga in the Sugar Bowl. That wasn't quite a fair fight. Who would win in a fight if Bevo and Mike the Tiger went against each other?
Tigers, man. So there's actually, so y'all know the Tigers on campus across the street from Tiger Stadium. when I first got hired, I went over to see the Tiger. Of course,
Right, of course.
I gotta go see the
That's what you
Tiger.
gotta do.
Let's go see this thing. So I'm looking in this. It's a multi-million-dollar facility. It's beautiful, and I'm walking, and I see the Tiger, and he's just walking. It's massive. It's massive. And I turn around and I'm talking to my friend, and then I look back and I was like, where'd Mike go? And then like in the bushes, it's staring at me, just looking at me. I was like, that thing, yeah. I'd be dead if I was out there. Well, we know why this thing is the king of the jungle right now. So I think Tiger would be picked over several animals.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I love the Tigers. I think it's one of the coolest mascots, and the fact that they have a live tiger there is just such a cool extra factor. All right, so last question, most important question: who wins the game? I mean, you're on a Texas show. You say LSU, and we cut this.
Oh, okay.
I'm
well,
just kidding.
you might need to cut the camera because I put in my pick for the Advocate already. I think the score is going to be 27-24. That's right around where the over/under is, I think.
Yeah.
I do think that this is going to come down to the crucial turnover. I think LSU is the one that's going to force that. I think Sam Ehlinger is a good quarterback. I think looking at Louisiana Tech last week, he still made some throws that Tech probably should have intercepted. And I think him running the ball, LSU has been good at forcing fumbles. I don't know if that's where it's going to come from, but I think the turnover is going to come from LSU in this game. But it's going to be close.
Yeah.
And I think the home field advantage is going to be a definite factor. This is going to be a game that will be bigger than Notre Dame was a couple of years ago. It's going to be as big as when Ohio State came to town in '06, and probably better because I think people realize the kind of team Texas had was not the championship team the year before. This will be an environment like Texas hasn't seen yet because people are so ready around here for the Longhorns to be actually back. And this kind of test is right at the core of everything. And I know Tom Herman is one of those coaches who tries to get his players up for the big ones.
Yeah.
And I think they know for sure how important this game is to the program and its success moving forward.
Yeah. Well, Brooks, thanks for joining us.
Always, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Great having you on. Back in the studio.
It's good to be back.
Stick around. Coming up next, Robert and I have all the predictions for Week 2 of college football. Welcome back into the 1-0 Sports Show, our final block, and it's prediction time, so let's get started.
Well, before we do predictions, it's Week 1 time, finally time for some NFL football.
Football is back.
It is back, just like Texas, and it's fantasy football time as well. So we got your start sit. To start, Thomas, who are you starting this week?
Week 1, this is obvious. You got to go with Austin Eckler. To me, it's a no-brainer just because Melvin Gordon still hasn't signed with the team yet. So Austin Eckler, he's going to be sharing reps, but he's going to be getting a lot of them. He's a great pass catcher, especially if you're in PPR leagues. Go with Austin Eckler. He'll get you some points Week 1.
All right, my stardom guy is someone that I've been singing their praise for so long. Lamar Jackson, Baltimore quarterback. He's the future. He is going to be the #1 quarterback at the end of this year in fantasy points, as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah, that's a big question. That's a big question. Any running quarterback.
Yeah, but start him.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the sit-ums. And my sit-um for the week is going to be Darius Geis for the Redskins. And conversely to that, I'll give you the Eagles defense. Go ahead and start them. But the reason I say that, Darius Geis coming off the injury still, from what I've heard, isn't quite 100%. But Trent Williams isn't back. He's still sitting out. He's trying to wait for a contract extension. At this point, probably going to be traded. So that offensive line, a little depleted. Questions at quarterback. Go ahead and sit Darius Geis.
Yep, I agree. He's on my team. I'm going to sit him this Week 1. I say to sit Sammy Watkins. Jalen Ramsey's going to be on him all week, and it's going to be hard for Kansas City to get on the ball after their first couple of weapons. So I say, especially Week 1, don't go for Sammy Watkins.
All right, let's get to our college football playoff Week 1 predictions. You've seen the board all episode. I'm sure everybody's just dying to see who we're picking. We're going to do this live. We have the teams here. We're going to go and stand up. So I'll do mine first. Hopefully I can fit in the frame. This feels like ESPN, except on ESPN they just touch it and it turns. So my first team, no change there. Alabama Crimson Tide, week 1. There's nothing to disprove me about them. I like them. They still have that chip on their shoulder. But number 2, Clemson looked good. The fact that they could get the win with Trevor Lawrence not even playing his best game has me putting them at number 2. This is going to give me, this is not going to make me popular. Number 3, moving in, OU. I feel like I should put it upside down, but we're going to put it upside. Bring the booze. Bring the booze. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. Jalen Hurts is incredible. Lincoln Riley is a genius, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but I am. And 4, I got to stick with one of these teams. Michigan coming to number 4. And my prediction for Michigan this year is, I'm going to fit in the camera. My prediction for Michigan, I think they make the playoff. I think they're going to limp their way. They're going to lose 1 or 2 games. They're going to be like an Ohio State when they made it back with Cardale Jones, but they're going to make it.
All right.
Robert, go ahead.
Time for my picks. I've always contended Clemson is the most talented team in the nation. You know, those weapons they have on offense aren't matched by Alabama. I really think Clemson's far and away still better than Bama, and I'm saying that as a big Alabama homer. But number 2,
big Paul Feinbaum
big
guy.
Paul Feinbaum guy, so it hurts me. But Bama, obvious number 2 here. These 2 teams are going to be the best in the country, and I would be surprised if they don't play for the national title. Number 3, however, I'm actually staying the same with all my rankings. Ohio State. Consistency. So I disagree about Michigan. A lot of people think this is their year. I've heard that again. I'm used to hearing it from Cowboys fans. I'm used to hearing it from Ohio State fans. The Ohio State, they're going to end up in the college football playoff. And number 4, the reason I kind of booed you earlier for your OU pick is because last week you had Texas number 4.
Don't bring it up.
All of a sudden, we're number 3. I still think OU's the best team in the Big 12. They're going to win the Big 12. Sorry to all of my alumni, everybody, all the Texas X's out there. OU's going to win the Big 12.
Boo.
That finishes out my top 4.
All right, let's get to some spread predictions. By the way, that looks Ohio State. Is that an omen? That's an omen for them.
That might be an omen for Ohio State. I don't know about that.
Right as I pointed to the board. All right, let's get to spread prediction. First game, Boise State, 11-point favorite against Marshall. Robert, who you got?
I got Boise State. I think, this is a talented team, especially what they did to Florida State last week. I really believe in Boise State.
Yeah, and actually, before we get to any of this, I think I was 9-2. What were you last?
9-2. I was not 9-2.
Not 9-2. Next week we'll have the updated things.
Rankings,
but I won last week. Just to remind people back home.
Yeah.
And I do have Boise State in this game. I picked them last week against Florida State. I like Hank Bachmeier, the freshman quarterback. He looks good. They're at home. I was going to say go blue. Go blue turf.
Okay, let's go Oklahoma, 36.5-point favorites over South Dakota.
Well, if I'm drinking the OU Kool-Aid, I got to drink it here with the pick. 36.5 is a lot, but this OU offense is so good. They're playing an FCS team. They're going to cover.
I think OU proved what they needed to against Houston. I think they're going to kind of limp their way to a 28-point win here, and I don't think it'll be in doubt at all.
All right, next, my playoff team, number 7 Michigan, 22.5-point favorite against Army. Who you got, Robert?
I got Michigan. I really think that this is a talented team, despite the fact that, I didn't put them on my board, but my team fell off. So I think Michigan covers easily here.
So I'm actually going to disagree with you here. And like I said, I do think Michigan makes the playoff, but I think they limp their way to the playoff. I think they beat Army, but I don't think it's huge. I think 22.5 is too big a spread. I think it's more 10, maybe 17, but I think it's close for 3 quarters.
All right. I thought I was blind when I read this one at first because this is number 2 Alabama versus New Mexico State, and they are 55.5-point favorites.
That's your team.
That is ridiculous. I don't care how high I rank them. 55.5 points. That is almost a point a minute. I'm going to Mexico State.
I think just to be the contrarian, I have to go Alabama.
Yeah.
New Mexico State lost by, it was 56-7 last week to Washington State. I can't do it. New Mexico State. Take New Mexico State
right.
plus 55.5.
That would have been a bold pick, though.
That's
you would have always gotten to say you picked that
because you got to be up 55.5 basically by the end of the third quarter.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, last spread game. Number 1 Clemson, 17.5-point favorite at number 12 Texas A&M. Or sorry, they're not they're at Clemson, but they're playing 12, Texas A&M. Who you got, Robert?
Well, I got Clemson here. I think this is a talented team, and this is actually their first chance to prove against another formidable team here. Texas A&M is no joke. They are, to me, they are, but they're no joke on the football field. So I got Clemson here.
This is another one where I'm going back and forth. I could see Clemson winning this big, but I could also see A&M coming and giving an upset threat. I think 17.5 is just a little too much for me. I'd say Texas A&M plus 17.5, but barely. I think Clemson wins by 15, 16 points, but I don't think it's the quite 17.5 point spread.
All right, you really flipped on us, putting OU in the playoff and now picking A&M on the spread.
I know.
Let's get into some game day predictions. These are straight up who's going to win the game. First game of those, West Virginia at Missouri. Who do you got?
Well, you got West Virginia, who barely beat James Madison. You got Missouri, who lost to Wyoming. I got to go with the Big 12 roots here. Somehow West Virginia gets the win.
I think Neil Brown's going to have this team kind of ready to go for week 2. I think West Virginia has something to prove, and Missouri is another SEC team that's going to take a hard loss.
All right, next game, number 21 Syracuse taking on Maryland, and Maryland has really, I think it's like they actually might even be a favorite in this game. It's at Maryland. Robert, who you got?
Yeah, well, Syracuse was one of the sneakiest good teams last year in all of college football, and I got them continuing that trend this year, so I'm going to take Syracuse.
I picked Maryland last week, or I guess against the spread. I think I like Maryland probably just because they always beat Texas and they're a powerhouse because of that. Yeah. I'm going Maryland. They're pulling the upset. I'm drinking the Maryland Kool-Aid this season. All
right, number 25 Nebraska at Colorado. This is an interesting pick that's straight up. After all of the Nebraska hype we heard for so long, here we are week 2, Nebraska at Colorado. So who do you got?
Last week I said Nebraska. They were playing Southern Alabama. I said no way Nebraska covers. They didn't. Southern Alabama kept it close for 3 quarters. This week Colorado wins. It's in Colorado. I don't buy Nebraska one bit.
I'm gonna take a bite this week.
Wow.
I think Nebraska's going to get this done. I like Scott Frost. I want to see what they're going to do. I think they figure it out this week.
All right, we got a good Pac-12 after dark game tonight, Saturday night, that is. Number 23 Stanford traveling to USC. Robert, who do you have?
All right, I got USC here because this is now going to be a battle of the backup quarterback. So Stanford's quarterback as well. Costello is going to be out. So, anything is possible, and I think Graham Harrell's going to have his backup guy ready to go. I'm still riding with Harrell.
I disagree. I have Stanford in this one. I know both quarterbacks out, but in my mind, it's David Shaw who's going to be the mastermind, put Stanford over the top.
All right, and now to the marquee game, the game everyone's been waiting for.
This is it.
6 at 9, LSU at Texas. Thomas,
Chills.
Who do you got?
Chills. I wrote down LSU. I did. I wrote it down. They're I think a 6-point favorite. If I was saying a real answer, I would say LSU wins, doesn't cover.
All right, that's the answer.
But here's the deal.
Oh, okay.
We're in Austin, Texas.
All right. That's a homer pick.
Texas Student Television. Give me that Longhorn hat.
Oh, man.
Hook 'em, baby.
All right, he's pulling the Corso. I don't know what I'm going to pull here. I guess I'm pulling the fine bomb. I've got LSU.
Boo 'em.
I'm sorry.
Boo.
I'm sorry to everyone out there. I got LSU by a touchdown. You just look at the board, and I think they're the best team in pretty much every facet of the ball. And I think Joe Burrow will do enough to get it done for the Tigers.
Well, should be an exciting game on Saturday night. That's all we have for y'all this week, but make sure you tune in next week and check out our sister shows, College Press Box, Monday nights at 9, College Crossfire with host Turner Barnes, Wednesday nights at 9:30 for Robert Trevino. Actually, I'm going to shout out everybody because everybody's been here since 6. We got Jared over here. We got Daniel. We got James, those guys here. I'm hoping I'm going to get everybody back in Master Patrol. Christine is here. Turner is here. Josh is here. Justin is here. I really hope I'm not missing anybody else. Obviously, thanks to Brooks. Thanks for everybody who watched the show. I'm Thomas Fitch. Have a good weekend.